Welcome, everybody, to another episode of the Detroit Sports Countdown Podcast. I am the host, Doc John Macaroon. This podcast is produced every week by Kenneth Frenzel. This is where we rank the top 5 Detroit sports stories this week. What a great week for Detroit sports. A lot of things going on with the Lions, the Red Wings, the Pistons, Michigan State. A lot of shakeups and continued moves in the Lions front office. A lot of great things going on in the world of Detroit sports. But we want to thank everybody for checking in on this Sunday, downloading another episode on the Detroit Sports Podcast Network. We appreciate you finding us on our many platforms at Podomatic, at iTunes, Stitcher, the DetroitSportsNation.com website. We owe a lot of thanks to them. They host each and every podcast that we put out. It's a great collaboration. We can't continue to grow and keep the mics hot and keep the office studio lights on without the support of everyone that follows us, that listens each and every week, and we greatly appreciate it. This podcast, like I said, is produced by Kenneth Frenzel, and what we start off each and every podcast with is the Kenneth Frenzel Honorable Mentions, where we talk about some news and notes that happen in the world of Detroit sports that don't make the top 5 list, but are noteworthy enough to make the honorable mention list. And the first honorable mention that I want to bring up is Martha Ford sending out an email to season ticket holders. Now, because of the Lions' struggles for years and years under her husband, William Clay Ford, they at times at the Silverdome did have struggles selling out because of just because the stadium was so large. I mean, it was well over 80,000 people could fit in the Silverdome, and so sometimes it was a challenge to sell out. Despite the fact that, the Lions struggled, the fans did support the Lions week in and week out. But now the Lions play at Ford Field. The NFL has lifted the blackout, so you're going to get to see Lions football each and every week, even though you may not have to sell out Ford Field. But because of the Lions' struggles, a lot of people were talking. And when I talk to friends and family and I say, hey, you guys are still Lions season ticket holders? Kenny and I bounced, just before the Millen era ended. We were like, we can't do this, man. We tried to go to the games and tailgate all throughout the Millen era, and it was just a big disaster. It was fun tailgating. It was fun cooking, hanging out with the fans. We built a little tailgate community there by Ford Field. But going into the games was just a nightmare week in and week out, and I've talked about it a lot. It was just too tough, man. Too tough to justify paying that much money. It was, like I said, around $55 to $60, and they kept increasing the price at the time. So now the Lions have struggled coming out of the gate this year, 1-7, and a lot of people that you ask and talk to will say, yeah, no, I can't renew these season tickets. And so Martha Ford, I think, has the pulse of the fans right now. She knows that the fans are angry, and she knows that this Lions organization is on the verge of losing maybe a lot of season ticket holders. So she came out and was, she understood what was going on with the fans, and she sent out an email saying, you fans deserve better. We are dedicated to try to put on a winning organization. We're trying to do the best that we can. Please stick with us. And in an attempt to maybe lessen the shock, because I really do believe a lot of people are not going to renew their season tickets, because it just doesn't look like right now that it's going to be a while before the Lions are competitive. There's a big shakeup in the front office, and the talent on the field really needs to be reshaped and redone. It's going to take a couple drafts and free agent classes to kind of do that. So Martha Ford, I give her credit. She is trying to appease her fan base, but in the end, you realize that, she's got to do what she's got to do to try to keep the fans. But her sending out, an email signed by Martha Ford to the season ticket holders, our own Jerry Mallory, host of the Hindsight 20 podcast, he got the email, but he, I think, is not going to renew just because he is also sick and tired of what he's seen from your Detroit Lions. So they make the honorable mention list. Also making the Kenny Frenzel honorable mention list is the Red Wings struggles as of late on offense. A lot of people have kind of peeked into the Red Wings when they made the news that Justin Abdelkader got a 7-year deal. That's a little bit long, in my opinion, especially and the length and the terms of his contract were a little bit long just based upon his production. I mean, you give a guy who's 29 years old a 7-year deal. It kind of brought back a lot of memories of the Johan Franzen deal to the fan base here in Detroit. In the last couple games that the Red Wings have played, they haven't looked that good on offense. I specifically am talking about the game versus Boston where they lost 3-1, and the Red Wings right now just, aren't playing that well. They aren't as effective on offense. You can see that Jeff Blashill is trying his best to mix and match the lines, but it hasn't been successful, especially versus Boston. It really kind of, looked like Blashill didn't put the line combinations together correctly. Again, lots of bad puck luck. They hit the post quite a bit versus Boston. They don't look like they're gelling well. You would think that the Red Wings would be more efficient now that Pavel Datsyuk has come back, but they have struggled. And it's a little bit concerning because this team has made the playoffs now for 24 straight seasons. They brought in a new, young, first-year NHL head coach, and he's trying to mix and match the lines, trying to find the best scoring combinations, and it just hasn't clicked yet. A lot of people may ask Kenny, when I asked him about, hey, what were your thoughts about some of the news stories, said that, maybe, just maybe he needs to kind of make that decision, get off the schneid, and pick a number one goalie, get these lines correct, and find a scoring combination. Because when you got Nyquist, you got Zetterberg, you got Tatar, Pulkkinen, you got Larkin, you would think that they would put the puck in the net quite a bit more, but it just hasn't happened. And it's a little bit concerning. It's getting to that point where you could say, is this something that can be turned around despite the early struggle? Some people will say, give Blashill some more time, give him a little bit more of an opportunity to get to know this team. But hey, now, you added a young guy, I'm just going to call him Double A because his name is just, really challenging. I got to get it down packed before I can say it on a podcast. But you had Double A come in, get his first NHL goal, but it just hasn't been consistent. Consistent scoring is what you need. And then this morning was funny. Linda Cohn posted an early morning tweet about a lot of people are complaining that the nets are too small, and a lot of people are complaining that the NHL nets should be wider. And she posted a tweet on her Twitter account saying, hey, look at all the NHL scores from last night, 6-0, 7-2, 6-1. And so I tweeted her back, and I'm like, hey, can we widen the nets or make the nets larger for the Red Wings so we can put the puck in the net? I'm just waiting for a more consistent offensive explosion from these Red Wings, and we hope it happens this coming week. But let's get into the top 5 countdown on this podcast, the top 5 stories in the world of Detroit sports as ranked by the Doc. Lots of contributions made by Kenny Frenzel. I appreciate that. I can shoot him off a tweet or text, and he definitely fires off a lot of great insight, a lot of great knowledge. Even though he's the ultimate Detroit Lions hater, jumped off the bandwagon, will rip me, call me a level B talent, not enough personality, he says. Still appreciate that. Love the hate, Kenny. And he produces this podcast week in and week out, and give him all credit for that. But the number 5 story this week in the world of Detroit sports, on Tuesday, Sergei Fedorov had his special day at the Joe Louis Arena commemorating his Hall of Fame induction. Now, some people will say, and Adam and I talked about it on our podcast, well, did you do enough? They didn't show it on Fox Sports Detroit. They didn't really retire his jersey. They definitely gave away a commemorative puck that they sold at the Joe. But a lot of people at the time who went were like, really? And Adam, who was at the Nick Lidstrom retirement ceremony he was at the, jersey his number being retired ceremony, he said they did a whole lot. It was a lot of pomp and circumstance. So it leads a lot of people to believe that, hey, there are issues between Ilitch and Sergei Fedorov. And a lot of people kind of, when you look at it, will say, you know what? The way he left the organization left a bad taste in people's mouth. The media asked Fedorov at the night, how do you feel now about leaving? And he was funny. He was kind of glib, and it was kind of very funny. He said, you know what? At the time, I wanted to stay a Red Wing, but blame the agents. They advised me, and at the end, you can't blame him. It was a business decision. He went out, and he tried to look for more money. He tried to take care of himself and his family. So you can't blame him. It looks like the Ilitches really, really honor those that stay with the Red Wings. Guys that start their career and end their career all with the Red Wings, the Ilitches really, really value. And so a guy like Sergei Fedorov, the question continues to remain, should 91 hang in the rafters? I say yeah. I think it'll happen. I just think a little bit more time needs to pass so that the issues can be resolved between him and the Ilitches. Number 91 should hang. He did a lot. He contributed quite a bit to the franchise. I mean, he won cups. He was a great player for the Red Wings, and he did a lot for the organization. And he deserves his number 91. He deserves to look up and see that hanging. Definitely, I don't think another player should wear number 91 for the Red Wings. All right, on to number 4. Wow, what a performance by Jake Rudock on Saturday. I mean, a lot of people early on this season said, what's a guy like that doing quarterbacking the University of Michigan? I mean, when you look at the lineage, you got guys that have made the NFL like Tom Brady, who arguably is one of the best quarterbacks of all time. You have a lineage of quarterbacks that have made it to the NFL and have had some success. And then you got, Jake Rudock, who comes in early on, and he missed quite a few open receivers early on in the season. He's kind of known as a game manager. Not that that's a slap in the face to him, but when you slap that label on someone, it kind of leads you to believe that he doesn't have that much arm strength or that much talent. But versus Indiana on the road, he really stepped it up, and he had a performance for the ages. He tied a record, 6 touchdowns in the game. He led them back when they were losing, and so, that performance really opened up a lot of people's eyes, and people were like, wow, a guy like Jake Rudock can actually do some things, and he's actually learning under Jim Harbaugh. So a lot of people have, really kind of got on his bandwagon and kind of are, on the side talking, is this guy really, can he be capable of being an NFL quarterback? I think right now he still needs a long way to go in order for him to be successful, but he does have some talent. He has gotten better. You can see that the coaching from Harbaugh and the offensive staff has helped him tremendously. So he definitely put up a great performance, and it was a noteworthy performance. It helped Michigan defeat Indiana in 2 overtimes in a game that really, really freaked out a lot of people. A lot of Michigan fans were really kind of nervous. Were wondering because in a rare instance, you saw a team that after the half didn't play as good and didn't look like the adjustments were as good coming out in the second half. Jim Harbaugh was a coach that typically at halftime made great adjustments, but this game versus Indiana, it kind of seemed like they didn't play as well coming out of the half, and Indiana just, really put a blueprint for a lot of other clubs to kind of look at to defeat Michigan in terms of the run game. Michigan's run defense got gashed quite a bit, but, the combination of Rudock to Jehu Chesson was outstanding. I mean, wow. Chesson really put on a great performance, and Rudock, all credit. I'm not a guy that's a big fan of the Michigan program, as you know, if you listen to this podcast regularly, but you got to give him credit. He came out there and he kept the team in the game and in overtime, making plays, making key throws. So that's the number 4 story this week on the Detroit Sports Countdown podcast. Now, the number 3 story this week was just a kind of a blip on the radar. It kind of came out in the Detroit News, but when I read it, I found it kind of fascinating, and it made my list. So I put it on there at number 3. Charlie Sanders, great Lions player, passed away earlier this year. And what was interesting about the story is, he has a $1.1 million pension plan. Towards the end of his life, he got remarried to his ex-wife 6 days before his death. And a lot of people are wondering, they were already divorced. What came out was the NFL's pension plan, the attorney for the National Football League's pension plan, Hans Mazikoy, came out and filed a complaint challenging that, saying that, we think that there is something fishy going on regarding this marriage 6 days beforehand. Mazikoy says in the complaint that, really, is this claim valid? And he's really kind of putting it out there that the court should decide where the $1.1 million should go. And it's kind of interesting when you got money involved, and that's quite a bit of money, and you're kind of wondering what's going on with this story. What happened? Is this marriage that took place 6 days before his passing legal? It's his ex-wife Georgiana Sanders. She sought the lump sum to get it all under the plan on August 24th. That she was informed that they're going to suspend it, that they're going to not allow this to go through just yet. And so the NFL is wondering, hey, because it's quite a bit of money. If she takes a lump sum, she's going to get around $550,000 under the pension plan and about $256,000 under the defined benefit plan. So it's quite a bit of money, roughly, $750,000 that she would get if the marriage was valid. I'm not sure exactly how his money and estate was established, but you kind of got to think something was up when, a guy is near the end of his life. Is that what you do? Is that you set up a remarriage to your ex and things like that? So unfortunately, Charlie Sanders, he died from cancer on July 2nd. He was an assistant for the Lions from 89 to 96. He was in the scouting department. It's unfortunate that at the time of his death, now there's going to be a question like this regarding, his pension plan and where's it going to go. It really is unfortunate when you don't have things in order and there's a lot of money at stake. But the struggles for Charlie Sanders' estate is a number 3 ranked story this week in the world of Detroit sports. Number 2 story this week is the Detroit Pistons' struggles now on the West Coast. Going into the West Coast swing, I had stated that I felt like they needed to go 3-3. And what was difficult was I thought that they could meet that goal when they won the first 2 games on the West Coast. They beat a great Portland team and they beat Phoenix. And it looked like, okay, hey, now we're off to a great start. I think we can have a successful road trip because a lot of teams go out to the West, from the Eastern Conference, and they don't have that much success. But the Pistons started off strong. And then they ran into Golden State on the tail end of a back-to-back. So you understand that's just going to be a tough game no matter what. The game that was really, really tough was the game versus the Clippers. I mean, you had a 17-point lead and you don't secure a victory. You blow it in the end. I know a lot of the guys ended up on, Sports Nation on ESPN. They're doing the national thing, getting some attention and things like that. But the last couple games on the West Coast trip haven't been successful at all. The game versus the Kings, you look at it and it looked like the Pistons failed to show up. They weren't ready to go. They may have taken a team like Sacramento lightly because at the time Cousins was battling his head coach. A lot of people were wondering if George Karl was going to be fired or even last through and Sacramento wasn't playing good ball at all. And all of a sudden, Cousins is making 3 after 3. The Pistons aren't playing well on defense. They turned the ball over too many times. And a lot of the things that we saw as being challenging for the Pistons in terms of their weaknesses kind of showed up. But the game versus the Clippers, they started off great. They played a solid game, and they got up to a 17-point lead. In a game where you're up 17 points, you got to put it away. You got to secure the victory. And in the end, they didn't do that. And that's a tough thing. Now the Pistons are losers of 3 straight. Tonight, the Pistons can have a chance to secure a 500 road trip by defeating the Lakers. They really, really need this victory. Kobe Bryant is a shell of himself. He isn't playing that good of basketball. And in the end, the Pistons do need to go out to LA and defeat the LA Lakers, get out to have the 3-3 road trip. Adam and I on our last podcast, on the Doc and Jock podcast, which comes out every Thursday, we talked about what we liked about the Pistons. We liked the fact that, on defense, they're playing a lot better on the perimeter. We like the fact that Andre Drummond is emerging as a superstar. We like the fact that Reggie Jackson is a guy that can emerge as well. But in the struggles, again, he's been inconsistent. KCP needs to step it up. In the Pistons' struggles, they just haven't played as well as a unit. The first and second teams haven't been as good. And what's concerning about the Pistons is they're started to believe some of the hype. I mean, just before the West Coast trip, they were ranked number 5 in the power rankings. They were getting a lot of talk regarding being a young and up-and-coming team, a team that can do some damage. So they might have started to read their press clippings and started to believe the hype. But in the end, they have to remember, this is a team that has to work hard, and this is a team that can't just roll up in any game and play well because, as you saw, they lost to a team that was not playing well in Sacramento. So I'm really hoping tonight, after the Lions game, I'm recording this podcast at the half of a 3-3 football game. Joy. But in the end, I'm looking forward to settling in, coming home after some events with the kids, and going to sit back and watch the Pistons play the LA Lakers. And I do think they're going to get the victory, come away with the road trip being 3-3. So I'm looking forward to that. I'm looking forward to a fun, week with the Pistons. But they have been struggling, and I hope, because in years past, once they started to struggle, then they weren't able to kind of pick themselves up. So I didn't think they'd have like long losing streaks this year. But the West Coast trips are brutal. They're tough. A lot of teams go out there and struggle from the East. But I do believe that the Pistons have a chance to come back 500. That was the goal. I don't think that they expected to go 4-2. They had a strong chance to, but 3-3, 500 road trip. If you said that before the trip started, I think the majority of the team would have said, "Yeah, this is something that we can take and walk away from feeling like we're still okay." So definitely, the Pistons need to go out and handle their business versus the Lakers. But again, they were just in the Staples Center when they played the Clippers, so they now have a strong understanding of the rim and the arena, and they can get their shooting touch. And I'm hoping for a blowout versus the Lakers. They need to the Pistons Lakers is always a fun game, and I'm hoping that the Pistons play their best and get back to their winning ways, because if the Pistons struggle, the Wings struggle, the Lions are continuing to struggle, the only good news might be the college football teams here in town. And now, thank you for waiting. We're now at the number 1 story this week, and I'm going to set this up. So the Detroit Lions have cleaned house. This is where we're at. Martha Ford has kind of been a little bit more vocal in terms of talking to the fans and stating, hey, we apologize for what we've put out there as a product for you fans, for the season ticket holders, for everybody that's been watching the Detroit Lions. It just hasn't been good enough. You deserve better. And I fully agree 100%. The Lions fans have been patient. They stick with this team. They buy tickets. They fill up Ford Field well over 65,000 week in and week out for season after season as this team continues to struggle and not put forth the best effort as an organization to really, make you believe that this team can win. So after an abysmal start, the good choice was made to cause an upheaval in the front office. Mayhew's gone, LaWand is gone. Martha Ford has indicated that they're going to do an exhaustive search. So in the meantime, who is running the organization day to day? The gentleman's name is Sheldon White, and he's got a long history with the Lions. He was a former player, a player that was on the last team that defeated Green Bay back in 1991, a guy that's been in the organization working in the scouting department. So right then and there, people are like, ugh. But he's made it known that a lot of people have texted him, guys that he's worked with and worked for, including Bill Parcells and former guys here in the organization, Mayhew and Lewan, believe that this guy has a chance to be a solid pro personnel guy, scouting guy, maybe even a general manager. So what occurs with the Lions? A guy who is tagged and known to be the interim general manager. He holds a press conference, and when you heard it, it was hilarious. When I first heard it over the radio, that's where I heard it, I was like, okay, why are they having a press conference for a guy most likely is going to need a miracle to even have a chance to even interview to be the general manager? I mean, I understand that, there's a Rooney Rule in the NFL, so most likely he's going to be interviewed, and they're going to interview tons of candidates. But Sheldon White will get an interview, but I don't believe he'll get the job. By all accounts, in the next 8 games, he'll run the operation and he'll do what he's got to do. And a question mark is, why does he have the right to extend contracts? That's a little bit questionable. And when I read that, I was like, that's a little bit unusual. Why give him any rights? I mean, basically, he just needs to kind of come in, flick the lights on in the office, make sure the organization stays on track, and just kind of keep the ship afloat and don't do anything to damage the brand before you're shown the door. But he came out and he did a thorough 25-minute plus press conference talking about, his desire to win, and kind of talking like he thought in his own mind that he was a serious candidate for this job. I mean, okay, fine. I guess you could say, you give the guy credit, but in the end, you could tell he wasn't ready. He wasn't prepared for an in-depth chat like that in front of the media. He sounded nervous. I kind of felt for him. I felt like, wow, if I had been up there in front of everybody like that, in front of the media for the first time, because I'm just a guy behind a microphone and I like to talk and I get the chance to kind of edit the podcast. So if I goof up, I can stop it, pause it, redo it. So I'm not doing it live, but Sheldon White got out there in front of everybody. He kind of stumbled, and he kind of produced several clips that were kind of funny. He's talking about how he's grinding. He's talking about how he circled Ford Field before he was notified of Mayhew and Lewan being let go. He went by and shook everybody's hand personally. So the guy is putting forth the best effort that he can to run the team and to sound like he's a guy that's in charge, but he didn't. And he made definitely a big blunder, and everyone heard it, and I'll play it for you next. But he might also, you never know, maybe it wasn't a blunder. He might be using an alternative method to try to get into, to try to please Martha Ford.
The biggest erection I got from Mrs. Ford.
But his mistake.
The biggest erection I got from Mrs. Ford.
It's tough to listen to without chuckling or laughing, and it's hilarious. But his mistake was, he didn't enunciate the D, and it kind of sounded like he said the erection that he had for Mrs. Ford.
The biggest erection I got from Mrs. Ford.
And I know Kenny, when he hears this, he's going to laugh and chuckle because, I definitely had to kind of edit out me chuckling, dying, laughing. But,
the biggest erection I got from Mrs. Ford.
Sheldon White wasn't ready for that. So I don't understand why they did that. Sheldon White doesn't need to speak. I mean, there is nothing that he can do with the roster too much unless he, brings on players from the practice squad to replace injured players because, Rasheed Mathis was put on IR because of his concussion problems. So he's bringing up guys from the practice squad. But other than that, what is the guy going to do? What can he do to improve this team? What can he do to help this team play a lot better brand of football? I mean, just in that first half of this week's Lions game, it's 3-3. They're running the ball still. It looks like that the offense is struggling. I mean, Stafford's still getting hit on a regular basis. So it just doesn't look like, even after the bye week, that they made that many adjustments on the Lions team in the 2 weeks. I know it's tough to win in Green Bay at Lambeau Field, but it just doesn't look like any improvements were made. And maybe after this comes out, it'll actually come to fruition that the Lions won the game. But the Lions right now are just, what they really need to do is go out there and do a thorough search, get the best players available, or get the best personnel guys out there. And I'm really hoping it's going to be Elliott Wolf or Bob Quinn. And I really hope they do look to organizations like Green Bay, like New England, to solidify their team. Because the organization, and we talked about it on our last podcast, the Lions need to build an organization, not a good team. Mayhew's built good teams. They need to build a strong organization from the top down, from the guy in charge to the scouts, to the head coach, down to the players. Everything needs to be looked at and revisited, and I hope that they do that. I hope Martha Ford doesn't get blinded by whatever Sheldon White's trying to, tell her and impress upon her that he can do.
The biggest direction I got from Mrs. Ford.
He was there with Mayhew, with LaWand. He was in meetings. He was part of decisions that were made and part of some terrible draft classes. And so in the end, he needs to be let go. Thank you for the services rendered, and goodbye. And maybe Sheldon White is trying to interview for another job, but in the end, that first appearance with the media didn't go that well. And it was unfortunate, but that's what occurred. It's interesting. It'll be interesting to see what the Lions do. A lot of people don't have faith that they're going to make the right choice, but this decision is going to be the biggest decision the Lions have ever made up until this point in their organization. The next 5 years hinges on them making the right choice and getting the right people in place to make some solid decisions, and I hope that's what occurs. And that was the Top 5 Countdown on the Detroit Sports Countdown podcast. To recap, the number 5 story, Sergei Fedorov back celebrating the Hall of Fame, his ceremony. Number 4, the Michigan football program and Jake Rudock with his epic performance. Number 3, Charlie Sanders and his passing and his estate. Some interesting wrinkles came about as a result of his $1.1 million pension. And where's it going to go? Is it going to go to his ex? And I wonder how that goes. I'm still fascinated by how you make that decision, when you're ill and you have cancer, to remarry your ex. Because you were exes for a reason. Was he, the question was he in his right state of mind to be able to make that decision? Fascinating stuff, story to keep an eye on. The number 2 story, the Detroit Pistons struggles. Starting off great, once Doc and Jock talk about them, they've struggled the last couple games, hoping for a 3-3 Western swing with a victory versus the Lakers tonight, and we all hope for that. And the number 1 story is the Lions and the press conference that was, introducing us to Sheldon White and his new plan. Maybe not talk about his, maybe he's not going to talk about his, scouting history. Maybe he'll impress upon Martha Ford in another way. Hey now. So Sheldon White talking to the media and introducing us to his, vision is the number 1 story this week in the world of Detroit sports. Again, I want to thank everyone who listens and downloads on the many platforms. I want to thank the Detroit Sports Nation for hosting our many podcasts and allowing us to be part of their great brand. They're just getting bigger, and we love being part of it. And thank you to those who have been supporting us by visiting our website, DetroitSportsPodcast.com. Go visit our website and support us. It's a free and easy way, and message us on our Twitter page at Detroit Podcast. Lots of great Thanksgiving and Christmas deals are about to come up with our sponsors. And finally, I want to thank our sponsors, Fanatic U and Detroit Beard Collective. Without them, we couldn't roll out this many shows every week and keep the lights on and the mics hot. So definitely check out our Twitter page at Detroit Podcast to follow up with the many happenings here on the network and lots of great deals. If you shop online at fanaticu.com, use the promo code DSP. Also, you can use that promo code at checkout at DetroitBeardCollective.com, and you'll save money. Meaning that if you use the promo code at checkout, if you buy something, anything at all, even an item that's on sale or something that's been reduced in price, at checkout, when it says any apply coupon code or promo code, use DSP. And you'll save money. So don't pay full price. You'll see many great deals and many things pop up on our Twitter page at Detroit Podcast. So I want to thank again Kenny Frenzel for producing this and for you for downloading another episode on the Detroit Sports Podcast Network. See everybody next week.